Welcome to episode 159 of Angela Watson's Truth for Teachers. I'm your host, Angela Watson, and I'm here to speak life, encouragement, and truth into the minds and hearts of educators and get you energized for the week ahead. Today, I'm going to debunk some dangerous teacher platitudes, and I'll have a little help from some educators from my Facebook page. Visit truthforteachers.com to get the transcript or to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy this episode, I'd love for you to leave a review on iTunes or in your podcast player app. Also, a big thanks to Advancement Courses for sponsoring today's show. You can earn graduate credits or CEUs through over 200 online PD courses. Everything's online and totally self-paced. And right now, you can save 20% off each course with the code TRUTH20. To learn more, just visit advancementcourses.com/truth. So we're going to open up this episode here with a little bit of drama. Everybody likes a little bit of drama every now and then, right? I encountered a post on social media a while back from an education leader, and this is what it said. Good teachers don't look forward to weekends. Our work is too important to imply that we'd ever be happier doing something else. And I'm telling you, an absolute firestorm erupted over that post, with all kinds of teachers pushing back on this idea that if they really loved their work and if they really appreciated its importance, they wouldn't look forward to the time off. Some people resented the implications of a man telling a workforce that is 77% women that they shouldn't imply that they'd be happier doing something other than nurturing children every day of the week, as if that's somehow our most important duty and something's wrong with wanting a break from it. Other people were upset with even the first three words. Good teachers don't. There seems to be no limit to the number of people, many of whom are not in the classroom themselves, who share absolutes about what a good teacher does or what a good teacher doesn't. And that whole exchange really got me thinking about these platitudes that we share in education. There's one that particularly bugs me that goes like this. A good teacher is like a candle. It consumes itself to light the way for others. I thought I would open up a discussion on my Facebook page. It's Angela Watson, the Cornerstone for Teachers, if you want to follow me there or check out the conversation. And I wrote there, so I'm working on this podcast episode that debunks some of the most annoying and dangerous teacher platitudes. What are the sayings in education that you wish you would never hear again? And I had no idea if the Facebook algorithm would even show that post to people to get their input. So I just posted it and forgot about it. And then I went back in to look at the comment section a few hours later, and I was floored to see dozens of comments with lots of thoughtful commentary. There were so many myths debunked there that I definitely wanted to incorporate their suggestions into this episode. I think it's going to be really affirming for you to hear what fellow educators are thinking. If there is a common saying in education that's always sort of bugged you, but was so popular that you felt like you must be the only one who'd really thought about it and was like, wait a second, is this really the message that we want to send to each other? Well, this episode is going to be super validating and super empowering for you. So let's start with the one that inspired me to create this post to begin with, which is about the candle. A good teacher is like a candle. It consumes itself to light the way for others. My friends, being a good teacher does not mean consuming yourself. I love the way that a teacher named Javi reframed this in the comments. She wrote, how about good teachers are like a candle because they can enable others to shine without shining any less themselves. I love that twist, and it's so true. One candle can be used to light another without losing any of its own flame or any of its own light. It's a matter of sharing the fire. A candle doesn't have to be completely consumed to be useful. In fact, the opposite is true. Here's another platitude that's similar. This one was submitted by Christina. She wrote, teachers don't do it for the income, they do it for the outcome. And I remember sharing a quote image online a long time ago on my Facebook page that said that. I've shared that quote many times over the years, actually. I thought it was really clever. But as Donna commented, she said, I actually do it for both. And she's right. The making a difference and making a living, those two things are not mutually exclusive goals. Just because you want to make a positive impact doesn't mean you can't also care about making money. As Rachel commented, outcomes won't put food on the table for my family. That's well said. Here's another one submitted by Melinda. Every time something is added to our plates, we're told it's in the best interest of students. Kendra said, it's what's best for kids. Yes, I hear that often whenever they want to add to my to-do list. Betsy added, we do it all for the kids. But I do this for my mortgage too. Teachers, yes, there is no shame in that. Like Vanessa said, I like kids, but if I didn't get paid, I'd be doing something else. Thermir responded to her by saying, I totally respect that honesty. So many teachers are politically correct when it comes to why they teach. But the reality is that teaching is a job that pays the bills, like any other job. I guarantee most teachers wouldn't show up on Monday if they had to volunteer teach for life, unless, of course, they have a steady income stream from somewhere else. I say amen to all of that. We have to let go of the belief that wanting to make money to live comfortably is somehow selfish or bad or antithetical to being a teacher. Every caring teacher I know also cares about the paycheck. We shouldn't have to hide that and embrace this martyr mentality that's been forced on us. Now, this leads to a really good one submitted by John. The dangerous platitude that he wrote is, whatever it takes. No, boundaries matter. People loved that one. Lots of comments on that. Laura chimed in and said, yes to that, and also its equivalent, you must always put the kids first. Do it for the kids. No, teachers cannot be required to sacrifice their mental and physical health for the kids or do whatever it takes at the expense of their own well-being. Now, as an aside here, I'll tell you about a counter quote that I really love. And not surprisingly, it didn't originate from the education space. And that is, you can't pour from an empty cup. That's so true. You have to have something to give. You have to fill yourself up first so that you have something to share with others. Eric mentioned the platitude of one is born to teach. And he says, this obscures the fact that great teachers are made through hard work, study, practice, reflection, etc. As a teacher educator, this one drives me nuts. And I have to admit, I never really thought of it that way before because I do feel like I was born to teach. I am a teacher at heart. I teach every day, all day long in one capacity or another. Even if I'm just out running errands, if I'm in the grocery store, I find myself helping someone or teaching someone something. I was that teacher who used to play school when I was 5 years old. I always dreamed of having my own classroom. But Eric's totally right. A great teacher is not just born that way. Yes, you might have the desire to teach inherently. It might feel like your calling or your purpose, but it requires a tremendous amount of learning and practice, experimentation, reflection, growth. Teaching is a craft and it has to be perfected over time. So if we reduce this whole profession to something where you're just born to be a teacher, that really downplays all the hard work and skill and money that goes into being trained as a teacher. Now, let's look a little bit deeper here at this idea of teaching being a calling. This was a platitude, actually, that Christy brought up. She says, it's not a calling, it's a career that you went to school for a long time for and devote so much of yourself into. You should be paid for it. However, each time a teacher says this, that it's a calling, someone else hears, teachers don't need to be paid more. They get to do what they love. And I guess that's sort of a myth too, right? This idea that if you're doing what you love, you don't need to be compensated well for it. So not true. Why can't we do both? Why can't you do what you love and be compensated? And I have to say, I've really been rethinking this whole calling thing a lot lately, especially since that interview that I did with Jen Bennis back in episode 153. That was the one about teachers being historically overworked and undervalued. I read the book that she recommended by Dana Goldstein. It's called The Teacher Wars, A History of America's Most Embattled Profession. And in that book, Dana talks about how in the beginning of the Common School era, which is what eventually led to our American public school system that we have today, teaching was seen as a calling which a person would devote their life to. It was like entering a ministry or like being a nun. So women teachers were required to be single and they had to be childless. They were expected to devote themselves fully and selflessly to their students. And a lot of teachers at that time were young. They're like 14, 15 years old because teaching was viewed as basically unskilled labor. It was seen as an extension of mothering, which is obviously an unpaid work. And the main job of a teacher was really to impart morality and manners. It wasn't really about academics in that time. So obviously salaries were commensurate with that view of the profession as a ministry or a calling. So when we talk today about being born to teach, or teaching being a calling, we're reinforcing that old narrative that has persisted for 200 plus years in America about teaching being something that you do only because you were called to dedicate your whole life to it. You don't demand that your own needs be met in ministry. You submit to the calling. You sacrifice your own needs for the calling. But today, teaching is supposed to be a career, right? Teachers are degreed and highly trained professionals. So even if a person feels like teaching is a calling, we have to counter the narrative that it's a calling that is supposed to be totally selfless. That is not accurate at this point in time. And it's certainly not healthy given all the demands that are placed on teachers. And these demands that are justified because after all, it's your calling. You're here to do it all for the kids. You care about kids. It's your calling, right? So let's talk now about a platitude that Amy submitted. This is a good one, and this is one that I personally found really empowering until I reflected on it a little bit more and thought about what she wrote. This was Amy's comment. She says, "I teach. What's your superpower?" It's not a superpower, though. It's freaking hard work, and we are human beings with limits. Patrick added, "Frankly, I hate this phrase with anything superpower in the title because a superpower is something that just happens to you. It's something you have no control over, which means the task is extremely simple for you to do or takes very little effort." Such a good point, right? And Vanessa added, "The concept that teachers are superheroes means that they can do everything at the same time. But teachers are actually human beings who need to take care of themselves in order to take care of their students." So here's a couple other platitudes that go in a different direction. I'll just run through these really quickly. They're so good. Nanette mentioned the saying about if a student hasn't learned, a teacher hasn't taught. She wrote, "I'm not a miracle worker, I'm just a human." Deborah added, "And I'm the only one variable in that child's life." Regina mentioned a platitude around class size. If a teacher has strong classroom management skills, it doesn't matter if there are 15 or 35 students in a class. She writes, "But it does matter. I've had both size classes and everything in between. You can obviously give more attention per student if there are less children in the class." Zendra wrote, "I get so tired of reading. We teach students, not math, reading, science, ELA, etc." First of all, this is a false dichotomy. It's not an either-or situation. I don't choose between students and the subject I love. This is a fake problem to pretend like teachers have to choose between teaching children or teaching the subject they love. It's a fact that I love both my subject and the children, and that's why I love teaching. That's what makes me desire to gain expertise with students and math. So I often say it this way. I love walking beside children as they learn mathematics. I love being there when they discover that they are, in fact, good at math and that math is neat. And finally, Mindy wrote about the platitude that data should drive instruction. She says, "But a good portion of the data is not relevant or an accurate representation of what kids can or can't do." And that is such a powerful point. It made me think a lot about why the term data-driven has bothered me so much. I will make a true confession here. I have never really used data to drive my instruction. Influence my instruction, of course, but drive it? Never. I don't need test scores to tell me if a kid understood what I taught. That logical, concrete stuff is just one piece of information. But my intuition and observation and anecdotal evidence, that matters just as much. And it's often even more accurate because it's holistic. It doesn't reduce a child's learning to a score on an assignment. I know as a human being with a connection to my kids, when a student did poorly because his parents were fighting the night before and he was distracted. The data doesn't tell me that. The data makes it look like I need to keep reteaching. And I know the kid who seemed to master the standards, but doesn't really know how to think critically or problem solve. But she's done so many test prep activities that she knows how to fake it for an exam. The data doesn't tell me that either. The data says she's mastering the content. Teachers, your humanness, your connections with kids, your relationships and observational skills matter. They are integral to the job, even though they're not measured. Don't let anyone ever discount that in your mind. So there you have it, a dozen-ish teacher platitudes debunked. And my friends, if it seems like I'm really passionate about this kind of stuff right now, I am. If it seems like I'm talking a lot about big picture stuff on the podcast these days and things around how teachers are treated and how the profession is viewed, I am. I share with you on this podcast what I've personally been learning and focusing on myself. And I'm telling you that over the course of this past year, and particularly these past 6 months, when I was finishing up this new book, Fewer Things Better, I began to see some things in our world and in our profession that I just can't unsee now. And I want to share as much information with you as possible about how you as a classroom practitioner can take charge of your career, take charge of the profession, and rewrite that teaching narrative to define the work that you do for yourself. Have a great week. You can do this. And remember, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be worth it.